webinar this morning. As Daniel mentioned, nice morning. Before I kick off, I thought I'd just give you literally a 30-second overview of Bytes for those that don't know, that aren't aware of us. So Bytes are a multi-service IT solutions business. We've been in this business for 40 years from next year, so very much grounded in the technology space. And I guess in a nutshell, we help organizations select, purchase, deploy, protect, and continually optimize and manage whatever technology set is required to help them run their business effectively. We categorize our organization into 5 key pillars, each of which is underpinned by our project management and change management and learning solutions team, just to make sure that any technologies that are deployed land correctly, particularly around the adoption of some of these great technologies that we've all been using in the last year or so. So those 5 areas you can see on your screen, top right, agile licensing and software asset management. So this is very much the cornerstone of the Bytes business and how most organizations know of us. We have a very strong track record of helping organizations save money and make sure that they are on the right subscriptions and licensing types to serve their needs. And Glen can really bring that to life in his bit in a second. We have a modern workplace practice that specializes in end user computing and everything that goes alongside that. So helping organizations look at Windows Virtual Desktop, deployment of devices on a managed service, and a whole range of other solutions that really bring that end user experience to life, so they're able to be productive in the workplace, wherever that may be. We have a very established modern data center business as well. So if you are looking at running on-premise solutions, then we can help with those. Once again, we have a strong cybersecurity business that was born out of an acquisition that we made, I guess about 10 years ago now. So we have a very large security practice that have the capability to advise you on all sorts of different security issues and solutions that you might be needing to further protect your data and your assets in your business. And last but not least is our intelligent cloud business, which really is the business that's been showcased through Equinix today. And Bytes have the capability to advise and help you with your whole cloud journey, whether that's on AWS, Azure, or Google, or whatever platform it is that you choose. And I guess that really sort of brings to life why we're here today. It's really to help you understand, not just the benefits of running, the state in the cloud. I think those are quite well documented, but how technologies such as Equinix can make that adoption a much richer experience for you. And equally, from the subscription side of things, how we can ensure that whatever cloud you are on, whether it's a multi-cloud or a single cloud, you're paying the absolute minimum for the consumption of the data and compute that you're using on those different platforms. So I've got a couple of great speakers joining me today. Tim Shaw from Equinix, who looks after their alliances, so the likes of Microsoft and AWS and Google. He'll be explaining a bit more about how Equinix can really help you on this adoption journey around Azure and a multi-cloud environment. And then Glen will talk a bit more about how you can really get the best value for money and minimize your cloud expenditure from a subscription and licensing perspective. When they've both explained a bit more about how they can help you, I'll then take back the talking stick and chair a panel discussion with the two of them around specific aspects of cloud adoption. You're more than welcome to contribute to any point during this webinar. You can use the chat facility, which we'll be managing and keep an eye on. So please do post anything in the chat, and at the end as well, I'll make sure that we'd have a quick review of that. So that's the agenda. I'm here really just to facilitate a conversation between yourselves, Tim and Glen. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tim from Equinix.
Thanks, Darren. So let me just share my screen. Hopefully that's clear for everyone to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Darren. So yes, I'm Tim Shaw. I'm the Alliance Development Manager here at Equinix. So as Darren said, my responsibility is to work with the cloud service providers that sit and work alongside us and drive and develop opportunities and conversations with our customers alongside our partners such as Bytes. Now, what I'm hoping to do today is provide a bit more detail as to actually what Equinix's relevance is to our cloud service providers, and certainly why they see us as such a key strategic partner in their go-to-markets and in their products and services that they use and offer out to customers such as yourselves. So I thought I would start with a fairly simple analogy. I'm a simple man, so I like a simple analogy, and sometimes it can get quite confusing as to explain to people what Equinix actually do. But I thought a good analogy to use in this instance is actually to talk about shopping centres of all things. Not sure if anyone of you remembers shopping centres. It's been so long since I've been outside, but they do still exist, and hopefully you'll be able to tour one in the not too distant future. But the reason I want to talk about this is because I think there's a good description here that links quite nicely with what Equinix do and when I talk about things like optimization. So I guess just imagine the days of before these sort of things existed and there were shops out there, and you'd obviously venture out when you could and go to various different shops around your local area and buy or consume particular products at particular times. The reality is that those shops were dotted around, and the expectation was that customers would come to them, and obviously that's a perfect model. However, obviously that time taken and the consideration that you've got to then move around those various different locations to be able to buy the stuff you've got is using up some of your time. It's costing fuel, it's costing money to travel, it's costing a whole variety of different things, and that limits the amount of footfall that these shops can get in terms of the amount of customers, but also limits the amount of choice that you have, because you're only going to choose to go to one of these particular areas. You're not going to be able to have the breadth of options to browse around at the same time. And so, shopping centres aren't a new invention. They've been around for many years, but what they do obviously is they enable everything to be under one roof, providing a better source for the customer and better footfall for the shops in one location under one roof in many different areas around the UK and around the world. And really that obviously changes the game quite considerably, and there's a reason why shopping centres are the norm now these days for any on-premise, any physical shop locations, is that ability to be able to put everything under one roof, provide you as a paying customer to, instead of walking around a large expanse of space, walking around one location where you can browse, buy and consume anything you want, from foods all the way up to tech, clothing and everything else in between. The point is, it's all under one roof, but it's all got one common goal. And really, when you consider what these benefits are, it's speed, agility, security and cost. As I said, if everything's under one roof, then the speed and the time it takes to travel between where you are and where you want to go is obviously reduced quite extensively. You can now get to everywhere you want and browse everything you want to in a much shorter space of time than you would do if these shops, for the sake of this analogy, were a further distance apart. Agility, obviously, because everything's there, you use whatever you want whenever you want it, and you can find whatever you want as a result of that. But it's all available in one location, which gives you that choice and gives you that flexibility. Security, obviously, these places are incredibly secure buildings. We've all seen security guards and other people there to protect not only our interests but also the shop's interest and everyone inside of that. But again, it reduces the need for any risk of security risks or any other implications. And then lastly, it's kind of more, combining all of these and looking at the cost benefits of that. Your travel costs are obviously reduced. Your complexity costs, how you map out, how you think about your shopping list and where you go. If everything's under one roof, then the complexity of how you get everything you need is far simpler. And then it's obviously about finding a bargain, which I know everyone likes and admires. But again, if you're looking for particular clothes, you don't have to commit to one particular place or shop in this instance. You've got the ability to be able to browse and look at various different options ahead of you without having to worry too much about the time implications, or having to look at your watch and thinking, I've only got a couple of hours to be able to sort this all out. And for Equinix, now to come to the reality of the situation. For Equinix, we're pretty much exactly the same as this particular model. For speed, we talk about latency. So we have all of the organizations, customers, cloud service providers, SaaS providers, network service providers, everyone and anyone you can think of, with a very eclectic ecosystem of products and services, and everyone alike sitting in our data centers. And it's exactly the same model in the sake of a shopping mall, in that everyone under that roof can share, exchange, and consume products and services with each other, with all the benefits that you would do in a physical environment. So again, speed equals latency. Because there's less time or less distance for information to travel between these various different businesses, your latency is vastly improved than it would be in a more traditional sense if you're trying to connect or consume services which aren't in the same area or aren't in the same location that you or your infrastructure are. Agility, I talk about it a bit more detail later on, but the complexities of actually accessing these services outside of your business can be quite complex, especially if they're business critical to what you and your organization want to use them for. Well, if everything's under one roof and you are effectively a kid in a candy shop, you're a 10-year-old again, and you've managed to wake up and you live in the shopping center, then again, you've got that instant accessibility. Everything is where you want it to be, and you can pick and choose whatever it is you want to be consuming. And then lastly, it's or should I say not lastly, but the security element is also there as well. Exactly the same analogy. Our data centers are at the highest security certifications, and the information or the data doesn't actually necessarily ever have to leave the data center, which means that no one from outside can access or breach any of the various different security protocols, which means that your information, your critical information, is far safer and far more secure. And again, much like the shopping center analogy, all of this leads to better cost savings or better optimization for you as a business as you look to drive either multi-cloud or digital transformation or strategies. The point is that we offer the platform to enable you to consume, access, and really build a strategy that works for you and your business as you begin to change and begin to adapt to the ever-changing environments that we live in. So to put this from a different perspective, and I guess just to provide a bit more history as to who we are at Equinix, we aren't a gym called Equinox, and we aren't a whole host of other things that people have ever heard of. But actually, we've been around now for over 20 years. And we were quite impressively around at the birth of the internet, which certainly sounds a lot more impressive. So the network service providers way back when needed a agnostic platform, a third-party platform, to be able to exchange the data that they had on their own private networks, but they needed to exchange it with each other so that they could reach a wider mass of people. And absolutely for us, that's really where we came in and where our business was born, was to be able to drive that conversation. Hence where the birth of the internet came in. Then obviously the web, the Googles and the Lycoses and the Ask Jeeves of the world came in as well, because they realized that the closer they could be to those network service providers, the closer they could get their infrastructure and their services, the better performance and the better latency and the things I've already talked about with that shopping analogy come into place. We host a whole series of different ecosystems these days, but electronic trading and again that speed of data exchange between their business and other businesses then come into effect. And then obviously cloud became more and more prominent within the market. And again, I'll go into detail a bit later, but cloud service providers realized that if they're able to put themselves into the middle and surround themselves with all the other various different organizations out there, they are able to provide a better service. In the same way that a shopping center works, they're able to put themselves in the location where all the footfall is, where all the customers are, so that their products and services can be accessed easier. And this is what really leads us on to where we are now. We have over 12,000 customers deploying and utilizing Equinix's services to be able to exchange data and consume products and services. And this is what we call interconnection, the exchange of data services within the Equinix platform. And these days, that interconnection has been quantified to mean that we've got, I think it's over 9 times more of the entire global internet bandwidth coming through Equinix data centers in terms of exchange of data. And the main reasons for that is, again, speed, choice, speed, agility, security, and cost, and optimization as companies change. Now, this interconnection piece, and again, another way to visualize it, is really where we're driving this new idea of simplifying your network architecture to optimize your digital transformation. If you are changing as business, if you're adapting, and I'm sure many of you are, and I'm sure many of you already have done, we're brought in absolutely to be that point to be able to bring it all together. And absolutely, this is why we're so strategically viewed from a cloud perspective. But if I talk about that, this is a really great slide if you work at Equinix, probably slightly more boring from everyone else out there. But the reason I want to bring this up is because, as I said, the cloud service providers are invested in the Equinix platform. They see us as that connection point between them and the customers that want to consume their platforms. And we have more express route deployments in Equinix than any other provider out there. But what's interesting, and the reason I want to show this slide, is because of what Equinix do, because all of our sites and our campuses are all connected. Effectively, it means that you can get express route connectivity and connection into Azure in locations where Microsoft themselves don't actually provide the services, and that's because all of our locations are linked. So you can connect into a local site, and you can still utilize that very low latency connection and high secure connection that ExpressRoute can offer you in new sites and in new markets. And this is where Microsoft and Equinix are so well twinned in terms of our go-to-markets and our conversations, is because we enable each other to be able to provide better services out to customers out there. So I want to touch on the fact, though, that we aren't just an Azure partner, and hopefully I'm getting the point across here that we are entirely agnostic. We have companies and customers from all different stretches of the world that see the value in what we do in terms of bringing everyone together. And multi-cloud is absolutely something that we see a lot of our customers are coming to Equinix for, and are reaping the benefits of what our platform can provide them when we talk about optimization being the key point here. We have all of the cloud service providers, as I mentioned, in our data centers. And by that, I mean that their physical infrastructure is deployed in an Equinix data center. If any of you are as dull as me and fancy a tour around a data center to have a look at this, I'm more than happy to facilitate that. But you really get a perspective as you walk around of actually what that means, and how close your own data or services or applications can get to accessing this, and all those benefits I've talked about where it comes to optimizing and getting the most out of the strategies that you want to implement. Another good analogy to use in this as well, and I know that clouds talk about this, but obviously they've got their own versions of these. They've got their own marketplaces or their own shopping centers. Can't get away from that analogy. And absolutely they do. And I think, again, just to kind of put it in another perception, we enable accessibility to all of that. So you can begin to pick and choose which services you want to use, and you don't have to be led by one particular cloud provider. You all of a sudden have the ability to agilely and incredibly quickly gain access into the particular clouds you want when it's relevant and when it's important to you, to put you back in control of how you are leading your own strategies, and when things become more relevant to you rather than what you can commit to more of the long term. We have more AWS, just like Azure, we have more AWS deployments than anyone else, which means we can provide a lot more choice. But we also have 2 different ways of being able to enable this process, whether that's you're only leveraging a single cloud and you want to optimize that across, getting your information closer to the clouds, or whether or not actually you're embarking on a bit more of a multi-cloud strategy, or you want to at least review what the options are with regards to multi-cloud. We can, our platform either enables a entirely virtualized network to be set up between multiple clouds, so you can directly route your data and your services between two clouds without the need for any infrastructure to sit between. Or more common for Equinix certainly is around moving your infrastructure or your services adjacent to the clouds. So you're still in control. You still have the control. You still have the protection, but you now have more flexibility in terms of how you want to use that data, whether it's for compute, whether or not it's for AI, whether or not it's for development, whatever else it is. The point is that it doesn't matter. You've got every single choice you want in one roof and in the area. And so I guess if I summarize really on what our message is here, I mean, cost, agility, speed, or security, it doesn't matter for us. Our objective and certainly where we're finding success and what makes us seen so strategically from so many of our strategic alliance cloud service providers and others out there is because of the fact that our platform brings everyone together. That's not just products and services being able to reach more customers, but it's more customers being able to reach those products and services. The same way that a shopping center works so effectively, this is really what we do. And this is why Equinix is so relevant in that transformative conversation when it comes to either cloud accessibility or multi-cloud. Our platform is built to optimize, and that's it. So with that, Glenn, I'll pass to you.
Thank you, Tim. So good morning. I'm Glen Rogers. I'm the practice lead for the commercial advisory service stream here at Bytes. And what that means is I head up a team of software licensing consultants, and we offer a range of procurement consultancy services designed to provide visibility and control around our customers' more significant or complex software expenditure. Over time, our services have naturally evolved from more kind of point-in-time tactical engagements around contract renewals, transformation projects, identification of non-compliance or merger and acquisition activity, to more strategic managed services handling cost optimization and containment around increasingly dynamic cloud environments. So our methodology for managing and suppressing costs in a complex cloud environment falls under the bracket of our SIM service, our Cloud Investment Management Service, and really is geared around using appropriate tooling to quantify relevant metrics such as workload type, uptime requirements, geographic constraints, etc., and then apply the appropriate resource or subscription vehicle to reduce costs, whether that is making use of an customer's existing entitlement through something like Microsoft's hybrid use benefit, or compute pre-purchase schemes like reserved instances, reserve capacity for SQL, or spot instances in for AWS licensing. Our services have been designed in a fairly modular fashion to allow you to take as much or as little as you like. But they could be broadly summarized into two categories, being advisory, whereby we conduct analysis and provide reporting for customers to act upon themselves, or managed, whereby we effectively take over the resourcing and subscriptions around our customers' cloud environments, putting in place the appropriate workflows to allow us to act upon our own advice on our customers' behalf. And when we talk about multi-cloud, a lot of that activity happens here. That initial stage in this very linear process of assessing the appropriate resource to apply to a workload. And to be entirely honest, for many customers, it ceases to happen after a while. Once a customer is standardized on a public cloud platform, they're typically less inclined to explore alternatives, simply because they may not have the resource or the expertise to effectively schedule migrations and manage multiple environments. Also, we find that if a customer has already made a monetary commitment to a specific vendor, then the returns would need to be increasingly significant for them to justify branching out, as it were. And from where I sit within the business, at times we're guilty of presenting a simple picture on paper of how cost savings can be achieved in a multi-cloud environment without a full appreciation of some of the technical complexity and overhead and costs of egress, etc., involved. So, leaning back on Tim's shopping center analogy, it's quite straightforward for us to signpost a customer towards a different, cheaper vendor or shop. But if that shop is the other side of the ring road with no parking outside and it's dark and it's raining, it's not that inviting a proposition to jump through all of those hoops, just to save a couple of quid. So I guess what excites me about the capabilities that Equinix bring to the table is that leveraging their technical capabilities and multi-cloud platform allows us to hugely augment this first stage, and by removing most, if not all, of the blockers to adopting a multi-cloud strategy, we're empowered with a much greater degree of choice. And essentially what it enables us to do is turn this quite linear process into more of a circular one, looping back and continually assessing resources and having a more dynamic range of options available to us as a result. Looking to the future, I think this will also lead to sort of a far more educated and considered approach to monetary commitment to vendors as well. Ensuring that when we make significant commitments to any given vendor as a negotiation lever at the point of a contract renewal, it doesn't lead to a false economy, and we find that that commitment has somehow limited some of the choices available to us further down the line. So in terms of real life scenarios of where we've delivered our cloud investment management services, these are some of the results we've seen over the past financial year. Our financial year runs from February through to March. I won't take you through these examples line by line, but really what I want to highlight is that there are significant savings to be made by adopting an intelligent cloud investment management strategy. Our legacy software procurement consultancy engagements would typically deliver 1,200, maybe up to 2,000% return on investment, and to be entirely honest, we'd be giving ourselves a pretty big pat on the back for achieving that. Over the last year alone, our cloud investment management service has delivered a 3,500% return on investment for our customers. Now, out of these examples I'm showing here, only 3 of these customers have what we could really truly define as a multi-cloud environment. And 4 of them, in reality, are pretty much single vendor environments. There may be pockets of other cloud providers, but in reality, the subscriptions that we're managing and the advice we're giving is around a single vendor. So I guess the takeaway here, that I'd like to leave you with is that if these kind of savings are possible against the limitations and constraints that we've discussed today around moving from one cloud vendor to another and the difficulties and complexity that can provide, imagine the opportunities that are available by fully embracing that kind of shopping center approach that Tim talked about to really open up the options available to us. At this point, I'll hand back to Darren, and I think we'll be running to Q&A.
Great stuff. Thanks, Glenn, and thanks, Tim there. Let me just put my screen back on. So what I like about the Equinix proposition is I think Equinix are probably one of the world's best kept secrets when it comes to technology businesses. This is an organization that has revenues in excess of, I think it's $5 billion, and clearly, is working strategically with all the same cloud providers that you will be looking to, Azure, AWS, Google, etc. And they give that opportunity for you to leverage the power of all of those vendors very, very simply. So I think that's what I'm hearing from this. So there's lots of technical benefits from leveraging those cloud providers, and clearly from a commercial perspective, drilling down the costs of each of those vendors independently is also very powerful. What I'd like to do now is really just open this up to the presenters. I've just got 2 or 3 questions for them. By all means, if you've got questions, then please fire them over. But the first one, which really I guess is aimed at Tim, why should organizations, and why are organizations really adopting a multi-cloud approach? What are the sort of the key drivers behind that?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah, so sorry to quickly on your point. Obviously, we're very humble about our status, but absolutely, I think the term I like to use internally is we're one of the largest companies no one's ever heard of. But absolutely, we seem to be involved in a lot of customers without them even knowing, just because of what it is we do. In terms of why do we see it, which I think is important for this. I think for me, I think the big thing is control. I think there's been numerous use cases and examples over the years I've seen where leveraging one cloud and building a platform on one cloud is good, but I think where the cloud providers differentiate is really where customers are seeing there's reasons absolutely to leverage all or one or many, two or many, should I say, of the clouds to make sure that they have the most optimized solution or can leverage the widest spread of applications and services that the cloud service providers have. I think that as I said, there's been numerous use cases over the years where customers can invest in one cloud, which is great, and absolutely, I know a lot of customers still do that. But you're constrained at that point when it comes to leveraging other parts or getting your data back off the cloud, should we say? And which is why I think customers are start trying to use multiple clouds so they can be in more control of what their data is doing, and how they can be more efficient with it. I think the other thing as well is cost. Again, using the same example, but strangely, the complexities of managing or working with one cloud as opposed to with two is that you have more control as a customer over how much you're paying the cloud service providers, and you have more of a negotiating stance with them as it comes to what are you actually paying for and how are you consuming and how can you be most efficient with that. Talking absolutely to the points Glenn was making when it comes to actually strategizing, is there a cheaper or better way of you being able to have or build the same solution or leverage the cloud in the same way with another cloud provider than the one that you're perhaps using in a particular sake? So it's good to be able to use a multitude of different clouds to be able to get that level of service.
Great. Okay, Tim, thanks. So that actually leads me on to my next question, which around the cost savings. But when you look at typical savings, I know that Glenn, you touched on this. What are those typical savings that organisations can expect, and maybe even from a performance perspective, that might be one for you, Tim. If there are any other technical gains that organisations might expect from this, but I mean, Glenn, if you can, what sort of savings are you seeing, and how are organisations making demonstrable savings from adopting this type of strategy?
Well, I think the savings typically present themselves in what I'd loosely categorize as two phases. Firstly, there's the kind of on the ground immediate opportunity that having an expanded catalog of vendors and services available to us presents. Allowing organizations to select the appropriate resource or subscription metric or contractual vehicle for any given workload. Typically we're delivering savings circa 30-35% in vendor versus their kind of more default pay-as-you-go models. But then expanding that across multiple vendors, it allows us really to fine-tune further. As I say, our experience of the cloud investment management service running across multiple vendors to date, to be frank, is not limited, but I think we've been limited by our customers' own constraints when it comes to migration. So where we see approximately 30-35% savings in vendor, from a couple of the examples that we showed before, we can kind of push the envelope there to sort of 40-45% by having a greater degree of options available to us at that point of deployment. But the second sort of phase of savings I see really is being able to diversify a cloud portfolio for a customer, as Tim kind of lent on, hugely emboldens our negotiation stance. If any given vendor knows that our barriers to egress, both in terms of cost and effort, are reduced, then they're more incentivized to make concessions or grant contractual amendments and to be less demanding when it comes to monetary commitments. And then, of course, when we are in a position to, through choice, to make a significant monetary commitment to a vendor, we would expect them to be more appreciative of that and put a bit more skin in the game. Leaning back again on the shopping centre analogy, if I can buy a similar or the same product in 4 or 5 places under one roof, then each of those vendors or shops, need to be as keen as they can to secure that business.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Tim, do you have anything to add there? You might be on mute.
Classic. Yeah, done the classic. Someone gets paid for that, I'm sure. Yeah, certainly from our perspective, again, yeah, the savings, I guess, or the conversations we have. So a lot of our story, and because of our cloud adjacency, we find that the customers can save 50% of their egress costs just by leveraging the services or the Equinix platform when having their conversations. So that multi-cloud strategy can become far more appealing rather than the concerns of committing to a cloud and pulling your data back off it, which can be quite costly. So again, to Glen's point, it puts you in a much better negotiating position because you don't actually have the same OPEX costs to consider.
Great. Okay, so in that case, that lends it to my kind of last question, really. So there's obviously some performance and cost saving benefits to be had. So what are the common blockers? Why are organizations not embracing a multi-cloud, and how can we help those companies overcome those?
Yeah, so I haven't really touched on it because we get into a world of talking about networking, which is probably even more exciting than talking about power, space and cooling. But I think what we see, and we absolutely know, and everyone on this call will be aware, there are many different ways to connect to a cloud and consume services. The same way that we use the internet and things at home and consume many different services. A lot of it is a case of we'll connect to it, we'll use some form of internet connection, and we won't think too much about that. And I think certainly, years ago when cloud adoption was first in place, a lot of customers and a lot of people out there were utilizing those kind of options. However, cloud adoption is only going in one direction, and I don't want to. No need to shoot off any of the facts. I think we all know that, and I think people are very aware of the fact that a VPN connection is probably not sufficient these days to be able to secure your information when you look at cloud access. And a lot of people more traditionally have worked with network service providers to gauge or gain access into one particular cloud and start to leverage that. But when you start looking at multi-cloud strategies and you start thinking about the performance implications, you've got to think of it as your, the information is traveling from your site to the cloud, coming back to your site, and then potentially going into another cloud. And that egress cost that I talked about before is very expensive. But then you've also got to think about the performance implications of that. The process of getting information from one site to another site, back to the first site, and then back out to where you want it to, and then obviously imitating that model however many times you want to, has a lot of complexities. And it's complexities around not just the performance and whether or not it's worthwhile, not just the security implications of where is your data going and how actually far is it traveling, but it's also the cost implications of all of that when you consider actually how much all of that's going to cost and how long it's actually going to take to implement. And actually, when you think about time in particular, is it even worthwhile doing in the first place? So I think this is still something that's in the back of a lot of people's minds, and I think it's still something that certainly at Equinix, to your point, Darren, we're a company not many people you either heard of us or you haven't. It's really one or the other. We see a lot more that our customers are coming to us specifically for that reason, of the fact that they have that problem, they're aware of that problem. But they see us as a way of fixing and overcoming a lot of those anxieties or those blockers which have led them to not look into it in too much detail before. And actually, what we see a lot of is customers that may be invested in one cloud, but they want to dip toe, or they want to just sample what another cloud service provider can provide to them, but they want to do it in a way that doesn't create an absolute nightmare for networking complexity or accessibility. They want to do it in a controlled manner because of the fact that either they're being driven by their business as a transformation, or and again, I'm sure this is very common, you're being driven by the shadow IT implications of the fact that if you're not able to provide that service, then your dev teams or whoever else are going to get it anyway. Now again, there's a big risk there. So why not put yourself in a situation where you have the best platform set up to be able to get the most out of multi-cloud, rather than rather than run the risk of a fairly rogue connectivity strategy.
Great stuff. Thanks.
And to add to that, Darren, I'd say, commercially, the key blocker we're seeing at the moment is that nature of monetary commitment to a cloud platform. If a customer has an outstanding commit to spend with a vendor, even showing them a potential saving elsewhere is less compelling. Tim, I promise I will stop stealing your shopping centre analogy eventually, but if you're,
Good.
yeah, I'm going to be taking it forwards. Yeah, if you're a highly fashionable individual such as myself, and you're looking at a grey jumper in Marks and Spencer's, and it's £30. It's all very well you telling me that even just by walking across the shopping centre, I can pick it up for £25 or something similar in John Lewis. If I have a £50 Marks and Spencer credit note burning a hole in my pocket and it expires next week, my choice is somewhat limited. And that's what we're seeing with organisations who have made commitment to various software vendors, having their choice somewhat limited by that. The bad news in the short term, once the customer is in that position and they are mid-term in that contract, to be entirely honest, there's not an awful lot that we can do about it. But what we are keen to do is measure that opportunity cost throughout the process, so that when it comes to the contract renewal, we're in a much better position to make an educated decision about where we commit and how we commit, and how making that commitment might limit us moving forwards. But then conversely, to position that back to the vendor in question to say that this is the situation as we see it. We have the ability to leverage multiple cloud platforms, and as such, if you want our commitment dollar, you're going to have to come back with something a little bit more exciting for us to earn it.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. I think you'd finished there. Not quite sure if we lost you. Okay, fantastic. So I guess the last one then, really, and then I'll see if there's any questions. We have got a bit of time still. If people are interested in learning more, what's the kind of the call to action on your side, Tim?
Yeah, so for us, this is a very, very common conversation for us, and as I said, a lot of customers come to us because they want to understand more, and they understand that we sit in the middle of all of this, and so we've got a lot of advisory workshops completely free of charge, where we can bring in some of our solution architects to be able to really understand what your journey or what your objectives are as a business, and we can begin to display a map exactly how Equinix's capabilities can map into your objectives, and how effectively we can drive more optimization and efficiencies. So if anyone's interested, obviously feel free to follow up with the Bytes team, and we can absolutely get some what we call digital edge strategy briefings booked in, and hopefully understand or be able to explain a bit more as to how we can help you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Tim. Glenn?
Similar. So for organisations that are interested in driving the cost out of their cloud environments, we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach, because every customer is different. Different verticals, different requirements, and different points through their contracts. So we have a range of health check and workshop style engagements, whereby we can take an initial snapshot of a customer's environment and then advise the appropriate next step from there. So really quite simply, pick up the phone to your Bytes account director and tell them that you'd like to save some money on the cloud.
Brilliant. Thanks, Glenn. Fantastic. Okay, well, before we close, we have got some time. I'm not quite sure if anyone's got any questions. Danny, have you any questions in the chat function?
No, so we actually haven't received any questions yet, but yes, please use the questions box on the right hand side to drop any questions you'd like to pose to the speakers. We'll give it a couple of minutes.
Okay, great stuff. Just whilst those are coming through, I'll use this opportunity to thank Tim and Glenn for joining us on the panel today. Hopefully that was useful and was a good use of your time. Thanks to Danny for setting this up. Great job. And yeah, if you do have any questions, then please post them through. We're going to be here for a little while. Okay.
No, it doesn't look like we've received any questions, but If you do have any questions after this webinar, please, as I mentioned earlier on, drop any questions or queries you do have to tell me more at bytes.co.uk.
Great stuff. Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there then. Thanks for your time, everybody. Thanks for your interest in Bytes and joining our webinar, and we'll hope to speak to you very soon.
Great, thank you.
Thanks all.